going to start over. And I'm going to every now and again leave out a line and then just jump to the next one. You might just want to check in and see if your brain naturally fills in the gap. By listening to practices, and they all start the same way, you might find that it just naturally takes itself on its own journey, and you're sort of following yourself. So don't try to think of the next line, but you might notice to what extent you begin leading yourself along the way. In fact, we could say we're leading each other together. And so we bring ourselves into as we rest attention on as we breathe. Aware of the body. And turning attention to the sensations of where your bottom makes contact to your hands resting one on the other, or noticing the sensations of your feet making as you breathe. And because it can be we'll take a few slower, deeper breaths as we breathe in and out. Breathing in and breathing out a longer, slower, steadier, tempered, even. Breathing in. And as we allow breathing to resume, so now focusing attention on the sensations of the breath and when you notice that as you breathe, it is the nature of the mind too. And so when you notice that your mind has, in that moment of, gently bring your attention back to aware of the body moving with and aware of and when you're ready in the next, lifting and opening Okay, so did any of you find that you were filling in the gaps? Maybe later we'll do it where I leave even more blanks. And in theory, there's nothing that stops you from just sort of sitting and saying, bringing myself into a comfortable seated posture, and the rest just sort of takes care of itself for whichever practice it might be. We began this semester with leadership and self-leadership. You have been going to that trail either by coming to class where we've been practicing and talking about our journey through mindfulness, and you have been on your own practicing mindfulness in the ways that you've chosen to. And we're always on that journey. And we're not always going to have or need a guide. And in fact, at times, and in the practice of law, with your clients, with your colleagues, with your family, with your friends, with opposing counsel, with judges, you will find yourself, whether you avail yourselves of this and are able to as fully as you could, you will find yourself in a position to lead somebody else, either with the content of what you communicate or with the way that you are being present in that interaction. So we're now 10 weeks in, a handful of weeks to go. So we will, as you might imagine, be beginning to, as we've begun to, narrow. Right? It starts off with a big, like Big Bang kind of expansion. There's just focused attention, body scan, open monitoring, connection, mindful self-compassion. There's these main practices. And there's the stop practice, and there's the drop the story, feel the energy, and there's the justice mind practice, and there's all these practices, 4, 7, 8 hands. There's the breathing techniques. There's box breathing. There's triangle breathing. There's line breathing. And then there's the understanding from your own experience of, oh, noticing the mind wanders, never realized it wandered as much as it did. It's like you're like on the trail and you're sort of realizing, wow, when I go on a trail to go somewhere, I'm just always wandering off. And you realize that that's okay to explore or sometimes to go, oh my gosh, but what is the objective? And if the objective is to sort of stay on this path for a variety of reasons, you realize, and that's for many people, for many of you, and you've spoken to it, it's not like that was unknown to you, certainly, but it wasn't necessarily as fully realized, or the consequences of it as fully realized. So it's just been this big introduction to so much. And I share with you that I sort of approach it as if it's like the Big Bang, because I think that it really comes down to some fundamentals. And we're all different, and we all have different life experiences, and we all have different interests, and we're all going to be pursuing slightly different ways of embracing our careers and our lives. So, and we're creative human beings, creative beings. So it makes sense that with all this, we might pick and choose the ones that resonate with us. And in fact, where did all these come from? They were made up by people. The focus attention practice was made up by people. Drop the story, feel the energy, made up by people. And they were made up by people for whom that particular practice resonated. And in your sandwich practices that we'll talk about shortly, you began to, and I loved, and I'll read from some of them, I won't say who's saying it, but you're always welcome to go, that was me. Because they're terrific. It's like I'm noticing that you're creatively packaging something up. Now some of you might go, oh, for me now that's a game changer. It's all about sandwich practices. I can now, it was difficult to do 4 or 5 or 6 minutes, and now I do 12 or 18 minutes because I do 6 of this and 2 of this and 2 of this, or 2 of this, 6 of this, 2 of this, or whatever that may be. Or some of you, it's like, oh, that was interesting, and that sort of helped more fully inform something, but I'm interested in just sort of sitting and doing this one practice. And maybe you've also created your own little variations. That's some of what I was detecting and seeing. And we'll talk about your creative variations. So we're now going to be narrowing. Today, yes, we'll have a song. I think it'll tie into some of our experiences at this stage in the semesters and in our sort of law school experience, where we are. We'll do a little demonstration. We won't have, Harrison has been so wonderful in being Mr. Mindfulness this semester, our mindfulness mister. But today, what?
I was asking if I'm retiring.
If you're
I'm retiring, I don't know, you guys are announcing my retirement.
I would give you, we would talk about it first, and I would let you come out and say, I've decided because of circumstances in my life that it's better for me to move on. And no.
Good.
No, that's for, just so you know, these people, they're just people. And when you're in the law firm or whatever you do next, I think you'll be going to a law firm, there'll be other people, and they're just people. And for the rest of your life, most of the interactions you will have will be with people. So I hope that you will carry it with you everywhere you go, and one way or the other, because the spritzing of the lavender or the eucalyptus is just a way of connecting with other people. Right? I didn't just say spray it around when no one's here. It's like do it when people are here. And when you do, like connect with the person, get some feedback from them. And it's also creating an opportunity to have a shared experience of focusing attention on something. So the little can of eucalyptus, like, it's just one of a gazillion things and ways that we can have that experience of helping others zero in, to have a shared experience of being present for something. So there's no retiring, my friend. But today we'll have a different sensory experience in that regard. So in a moment, I'm looking forward to us talking about your spiral experiences, either that you draw upon from a week or so ago, if you look at your previous spiral or remember it, or in all likelihood, you don't have to go back that far. You could probably just go back to earlier today or yesterday or the day before. So whether you draw upon a spiral experience that you made note of and specifically attended to in the assignment a couple weeks ago, or whether it's something that just comes to mind now. What does the spiral start with? It starts with life happens. And we could call that life happening an event. Right? And then on the heels of that event, of life happening, three things, very quickly, shift. What are those three things? Thoughts, feelings, sensations. They don't emerge very nice. They don't emerge like I wasn't thinking, feeling, or sensing. We were, but all of a sudden those get marshaled in a certain direction. And they have an impact on us, and they can lead to an overreaction. Could lead to a response, a very skillful response. Could lead to an unhelpful overreaction. Because life happens, and we're always there to do something, not do something skillful, not do something not as skillful as we would like. In the not doing of anything, that being skillful. Sometimes the not doing is actually not so skillful. We shy away from an opportunity to. And we talked a little bit about striking back and giving up and compromising. That can be reactive, or could be useful in a different way of framing it. Firm and engaging and intense in one's communication of information. Not necessarily striking back, but leaning in. And then our overreaction is oftentimes intended to actually, what's really going on? Why are we really engaging in that conduct or whatever it is that we're doing or not doing that we would term an overreaction? Why are we really doing that?
We're resisting.
We are resisting. And the overreaction, whatever form it takes, if we're in the driving context, Monica, we're honking the horn, or we're in a conversation with somebody and we're just like, I'm out of here. And we could call those, say, assuming those are overreactions. They could be skillful under certain conditions. Why are we doing that? Why are we honking? Why are we leaving the conversation abruptly?
Make yourself feel better.
To feel better, right? And then what happens to those thoughts, feelings, and sensations? That because we're resisting them because they are unpleasant, unwanted, undesirable. There's something, that's one of the reasons why we're resisting them. And so then we do something, and if we're really doing it to feel better, and there's nothing wrong with doing something to feel better, especially if we are aware that that's why we're doing it. But if we're not aware of why we're doing it, then it's a little confusing for ourselves and others, and we might be missing opportunities. So to the extent that we can notice spirals as they start, as they take hold, something shifts or can shift. So that's nice. That is the anatomy of a spiral, the way we've been exploring it. And so we'll talk about practical examples or real world examples. We'll also talk about your sandwich practices. And I'll read a little bit from some of you because it's not only the way you packaged it, but it's also the way you talked about why you chose it. Why you chose it. We will pick up with Leonard Riskin's certain aspects of his piece because I think it's helpful as an end unto itself to develop a drawing upon the core concerns or learning to drop beneath the position somebody has to inquire more about their interests or even understanding our own interest. We'll take it a little further today. We'll begin with this idea of the obstacles that he writes to, the obstacles that get in the way. And we'll also be talking about the term obstacle in a related way of challenges and obstacles. And we've talked about that this semester already, but we'll be revisiting it, and I put together a couple of videos for you so that you can, in your own time, watch a discussion of them because they'll be very helpful and somewhat crucial to some extent for your papers. And we'll talk about that. You learned about mindful walking. I'm interested in what your experience was with mindful walking, and during our break, we'll entertain a little mindful walking. And we'll also entertain and this will be on the web page for next week, so I want to share it with you now so that you have it on your mind, and when we go out even, you'll begin it, which is, we've talked about the present moment pivot, and we learned a particular methodology for the present moment pivot. What was that methodology shared with you at the very beginning of the semester? To do what?
To count.
To count. And in what way?
I don't know how to explain it, but like up to 6.
Yeah, up to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then after you get to 6, to do what?
You go like 2.
Well, before we do that, but you're right.
You say it again. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Correct. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, you could think of it could be a walking practice, basic walking practice, mindful walking. 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when we learned it, we did it in our head. But it could be applied to something as rudimentary as that. And you learned other ways that mindful walking is left, right, or whatever it may be. What kind of practice is that if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mindful walking practice or a left, right? What kind of practice is that? Focused attention practice. So now we're going to take that present moment pivot, which doesn't depend on 1 through 6. Anything that you do that gives you a present moment pivoting back to would be a present moment pivot. That's just an example of one. And it's also a building block for everything that we've sort of explored. But when we go outside, we're going to find, and this was talked about a little bit before, some of you may have availed yourself of this. I wasn't following up on it in a rigid way, so there was no need to have. But remember, like, the idea of when you come to campus to find a place, each place, and then just like stop, take a breath, observe, proceed, a lot of variations on that. When we go outside, at some point, we'll take a regular old break, but we'll also we'll do this together and then sort of disband for a few moments, but you will find your present moment pivot point. It's a point, a place, where you'll approach it for the rest of the semester when you remember, and as intentionally as you choose, that when you get to that place, that present moment pivot point, you actually use it to pivot back to the present moment. And there's a lot of ways you could do that. You could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and probably 12 seconds has passed. Then you carry on. You could do it all the way to 6, and about a minute will have passed. Then you carry on. You could just drop the story and feel the energy, one of our but-for pauses. You could just practice stop, take a breath, observe, proceed. You could do any of it, but find the one that actually means something to you, to resonate with you. And then in the mindful walking, it isn't just about left, right, left, right, left, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At some point, it's like, like what's going, all this, the air, the breeze, the colors, the sights, the sounds, the fullness of this moment. Before I was like left, right, but that was helpful for what? Steadying attention. And so that's a useful thing to do, because there's always tends to be this, tendency, this like entropic tendency for our attention to just sort of billow out. So as much as we can comfortably, without over rigidly, but that's different for everybody, practicing that at some point, it's like, okay, now I can follow the trail, so now let me really enjoy the view, not worrying about wandering off and falling off or landing in some place that's not so helpful. And what kind of practice is that if you're out walking and you're sort of enjoying the view or being present for the view? Open monitoring. Right? And if you see a little bird on the ground and it's like wings hurt, or you see some people, a young person helping an older person, or two people helping each other, and there's or you see somebody yelling at somebody, or you just see the beautifulness of a vista that just surprises you. What might shift in that moment, in particular, of the 3 things in the spiral? What might shift? In particular, when you see the little bird injured, feelings. And with those feelings, sensations in the body. And while you're walking and you see something, you might actually turn and notice the sensations in the body. Like, the tendency might be to run and do something, which could be useful, but maybe not. Or to run, like, I don't want to, which might be useful, maybe not. But there's this moment where we could first, while we're walking and we see and we have that experience, we could do what? We could turn our attention to and notice the breath. And with the breath, in many ways, the breath is part of when we notice the breath, we're really noticing the way that the air impinges on what? You don't really notice the breath, right? I mean, you're correct. That's a great answer, Harrison. That's what I was looking for. But to be clear, what do we know the breath because it has what? It impinges on our body. And when we notice our breath, we might notice that our breathing has become a little shallow. Or maybe we've begun to hold our breath. Now, that really is saying that the body has shifted. If the body has shifted, the breath happens to be one way that we can turn our attention to and then notice how the body has shifted. And if we did that, if we sort of saw the little bird, if that's something that, would, and we're like, oh, and we notice that there's a heaviness here, and we notice that our breathing might get a little faster. What kind of practice is that?
Body scan.
Body scan, right? Are we trying to practice the body scan when we look around? Are we trying to practice the body scan in that moment? No, we're not trying to practice it. But the invitation is always there. Oh my God, little bird on the ground. Thoughts, oh my God, little bird, I can't, oh my God, that's terrible. Feelings, sadness, whatever that might be. Sensations in the body. Possibly an overreaction to, pick it up and then take it somewhere. And somebody says, oh, why'd you touch it? Oh my God. There's another spiral going, oh my God, I can't believe I touched it. So in the moment that we find ourselves in a moment like that, if we've been practicing noticing sensations in the body, what will we be more aware of happening in that moment? If we've been practicing noticing sensations in the body, what will be more likely to notice happening in that moment?
How tense we are.
We could notice how tense we are, which would be, how do we know, where is tension held? In the mind? In the way that we're zeroing in on it. How do we know tension? Where is tension taking place?
In the body.
In the body. So the more we practice attending to the sensations in the body, the more likely we are to notice that there's a shift in the sensations in the body, like we're tense. And in that realization, we could then spend a few moments paying attention as we then decide what to do. Or we just notice it and it influences, it has less of an impact on us because we've noticed it and caught it sooner. Because we've caught it, we have less thoughts that are billowing around it, that build up the sensations in the body. And we're not doing anything on purpose, but we're just not living out a reactive moment that's perhaps gratuitous to live out in the first place. We're just avoiding the thing that was always a distracting, getting caught up in a story. So we can walk and just feel very grounded because we sort of say, I'm going to notice the sensations of my feet as I'm walking, and we're not doing left, right, we're not doing 1, 2, 1, 2, we're not doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, though those are all nice practices. We're just aware of our feet making contact with the ground, and there's just this ongoing continuity of sensing that in groundedness. Or we can find ourselves, and if we're doing that, will our minds be as likely to wander? If we're aware of the sensations of our feet and we really feel that connectedness to the earth, are we as likely to be worrying about the future and fretting about the past and coming up with stories about something that's going to happen later in the day that may not even happen and certainly isn't likely to happen the way we think it's going to happen, which is usually a worst case scenario, parade of horribles? It's all just getting caught up in this understandable proliferation of thoughts that are wired to keep us safe, which in most instances, not all, but in most instances are unnecessary. They're just falling in. We're just going to get back and have a meeting with someone. Or we're going to, take a test. So the practices, focused attention, body scan, open monitoring, and of course you could be walking and you see somebody walking, somebody maybe you don't know, maybe somebody you do know, but they weren't so nice to you in that meeting the other day, or maybe somebody you care very much about, and what might you do in that moment of noticing them as you are out walking about? Wish them kindness. Which practice would that be? And all of these you can do on purpose. I'm going to go out, I'm going to focus on my feet. But you can also have it where as you become increasingly present, moment-centered, grounded, just a little bit more than you historically have been, you just will be a little bit more grounded, a little bit less bouncy in thoughts. You can go outside and you can say, I'm going to pay attention to the sensations of my body as a body scan practice. As you notice things, you smell things, you go, I don't like the smell of that. And you just turn your attention, notice where in the body. Right? Or you see something that's delightful and you're like, oh my God, I feel so. Or you can have it where, because you've been practicing the body scan, it just naturally comes into those moments. You can say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to practice just being open and receptive to what's taking place around me, open monitoring, but you can also have it where as you've been practicing, you're just more likely when you're out and about to notice and be receptive to what's taking place around you. All of these are practices that we can do intentionally. It's the path that Leonard Riskin says. Mindfulness is a path. He's referring to the practices. It's a path. And it's a... Well, it is a journey that leads to arguably but I would actually say it's a path and a journey, so I like that. But he says in particular it's a path and begins with a D, destination. And the destination is, I'm here, I'm present for this moment. And there's practices to support that as well. Okay. So, let us talk about your spiral experiences. What are some of the things that what are some spirals that you noticed? And if you have your spiral form in front of you, it could be useful if you wish to. You don't have to, but if you wish to share, because you could also speak a little bit to what you wrote down relatively in real time as it relates to observations. So who would like to give us a tour through their spiral? Yes.
I have a really bad spiral. It's the package room in my apartment building.
The package room in your apartment building, yes.
Yes. So,
and as you tell it, try to try to speak to the spiral. So if somebody were sitting here with a spiral thing, as you were talking, it doesn't have to be perfectly linear or have it follow it, but as you're talking, they would be able to fill in all of the pieces just from what you're saying. So go ahead.
Okay, so like for context, like I have a package room and then I have like the mail room, and the package room is where you're supposed to get like your big packages like Amazon, food, whatever. But sometimes if it's a small enough package, it'll be shipped to the mail room, and the mail room doesn't put my mail in there. I haven't gotten mail in over 2 years that I've lived there. And I've told the leasing office and the mail people, and they don't want to listen to me. I even wrote down my name inside the mailbox, like Nicole Perez, and they still don't get it. So then they'll put like my clothes, like I had like a dress that was put in someone else's mailbox. I don't know why I keep on doing it, but it's the only place I can get my mail.
Yeah.
So I ordered a dress that I wanted, and I said, well, it's supposed to get into the package room, so it'll be safe. No, they sent it to the mail room. I couldn't find it, as always.
So is there an event at this moment? Have you laid out the event, the life happening?
Yes, it's when I go into the package room and I can't find it.
Okay, so you're supposed to be there looking for your dress.
Yes.
You can't find it. Life happens.
Yes.
Unwanted?
Yes.
Undesirable?
Yes.
Unpleasant?
Yes.
Unexpected? Not, that's all hard, right? Okay, good. Okay, so there we have the event. Go on.
So then I run to the mail room and I open my little box, and of course it's not there.
Okay, life continues to happen.
There's no key waiting there. So my thoughts are, my leasing office is incompetent. The mail people are incompetent. Because I even wrote my name down.
Yes.
So I'm blaming everyone else for it.
Yes.
Those are my thoughts. My feelings, my blood is boiling. I'm pacing
is that
around.
A feeling? So wait, let's zero in on feelings. The pacing and boiling are certainly helping explain your feelings, but what specifically would the feelings be?
I'm just like angry and frustrated and upset, because then I have to call the customer service line for my dress people.
Well, you're upset and you have a thought. So you're angry, frustrated, upset, which is a combination of those. And then because I have to call is a thought, right? That's accompanying it. So here's the feelings and then the thoughts, right? And they're bouncing around. Very, very nice. By the way, would many of us have a similar, like we would be like, oh yeah, I could, you could have set me in motion in that regard, and I would have a very, shared set of experiences. Okay, go on. And now speak to the sensations in the body that you began to point to.
My blood starts to boil. I pace around. I guess like an action thing, like I once...
But sensations in the body, even the pacing around, you're jumping ahead. The pacing around could be like, I get restless, and so that's connected to it, right? But blood boiling, So what does that mean, blood boiling? Because that's
I feel hot.
feel hot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Which is like gearing up for battle, right? The blood
Yeah.
begins to sort of marshal itself into all the vital places so that we can, fight,
Yeah.
flee, but in this case, fight, right? Or whatever, we don't know yet. Okay, what other sensations in the body might be? In fact, if you were in that situation, what other sensations in the body do you think you would experience? Heat, sort of a restlessness in the legs, what else?
Stress. Stress.
Okay, but but what is it that you'd be experiencing in the body that you would then say, oh, because I'm experiencing the body, I must be stressed, or that the stress is associated with?
Sweat.
So there could be sweating. What else?
Your heart racing.
The heart racing.
My fist clenching.
Your what?
Fist.
Fist clenching. You're right. And if your fists are clenching, if your heart is racing, if you're sweating, you're probably feeling stressed, right? Very nice. Okay. And so you have, they're just sharing what theirs would be, and so now we have a sense of the sensations in the body. Any other thoughts might be going through other people's minds if you were in a situation like that? In addition to, they are incompetent, I can't, what else? Which, by the way, sometimes the thoughts we're having are quite true. It may not be so helpful, right? Because we still didn't want our box, but what else?
Like, why is it always me?
Why is it always me? Right, which connects up with one of Riskin's things. That's right, very nice. Why is this happening? Why is it always me? Why is this happening to me? What else?
Maybe like worrying, like what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get this package?
Right, because who knows, maybe you have an event that night and that's why you want.
did.
You did, right, okay. And so we have the thoughts, feelings, sensations, and then there's this interesting what happens next. So what happened next?
I storm into the apartment. My boyfriend is there, and I say, "Oh, this sucks. Like, I hate the mailroom. I hate the package room." And he's like, "Do I help you?" And I'm like, "Leave me alone." And then I storm out.
Okay, it's a little moment of actually effective communication, I would say. So, okay, good.
So I get argumentative with like people that it's not even their fault. What
Yes.
happened? I'll probably call my mom to argue with her, although it's not.
Right, because why would we call our mom? To
Feel better.
feel better. Why would we yell at people that it's not even their, why would we do that? In some ways, we're releasing that tension, we're feeling better, right? Like we grew up, spent a lot of time crying, right? And so it's there inside of us, and oftentimes, not for all of us, maybe all the time, certainly not for all of us all the time, we would cry, and I'm not trying to locate why this is, but we would cry, and then what would happen?
Get away.
Huh?
Get your way.
Yes, if you were, no, if you're a teen, from this moment back until, adolescence, we might get our way. But when we're like before the adolescence, when we're just a little baby crying, what happens? Somebody comes over, ideally, and does what? Shushes you. Oh, well.
Or comforts you.
You what?
Comforts you, I guess.
Comforts you, yes. Yes. Well, no, that happens too. Sometimes, and sometimes we don't want to sometimes we go the other way. We're just like, why does this always happen to me? And we're just like, we get quiet and we withdraw. And maybe that's because it was always a shushing, right? But oftentimes the shh is actually soothing. It's like shh. And it's a nice example because when baby's crying, and a parent who wishes to take care of the baby, as many do, is the parent having possibly a spiral moment, right? Trying to get my work done. I'm not a good parent. Whatever that might be. There's the event, just a baby crying. Then there's the thoughts and the feelings of the sensations, and then there's the what happens next. And there's the very skillful responding, which many have at their disposal sometimes, but few have all the time, and some have very little of at their disposal because of the way they were conditioned, brought up, what they learned perhaps, or just the nature of their moment-to-moment life in terms of its difficultness. And so the shh actually is a combo, isn't it? It's like shh, but it is also a shh. Okay. So you're ranting and raving, but in this way that seems like you're mobilizing in a certain direction. You're reaching out and connecting with. And I say ranting. I'm playing actually quite playful when I say ranting because I don't hear ranting and raving. I hear you're sort of trying to figure it out, and you're reaching out for other people to connect with. You're being a little bit not so. Not your nice Nicole nature unfolding in a typical way with people who are just in your way as you're making your way to the thing. Get out of my way. Go on.
I got paper and then I wrote down, this is my phone number
Did it
and
again.
my name, and I like taped it around the whole mail room because I was just so mad.
Right. So you were it was a little passive aggressive.
Yes.
Okay. But also useful perhaps.
Yes,
It's a
I did
combo.
get text messages of people trying to mess around with me, like, hey.
Aww. Right.
They wanna help
Because they
me.
saw this stuff plastered all over their mailroom, and they had their little spiral. I can't believe this person's like, okay. So what happened?
Nothing, I just left the signs there, and I just called the customer service people. They refunded back my money, and someone left the dress, like, I guess they got in their, like, mailbox, and they were kind enough to, like, not take it or steal it or anything, and they just left it outside, and it was there.
And you got it.
Yes.
And how many months after was that?
No, it was like,
I know. I
probably
said that.
2 days
So 2 days.
later or something. So I got a dress for free, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
Did you call Amazon and tell them that you got it? Well, with that rationale, you can get a lot of things free in this world. But yes, and it's okay. If you did, they'd probably say keep it because the hassle of returning things, as you probably know, oftentimes they're like just keep it because it takes more time and energy and stuff to whatever. But one of the reasons we keep it is because keeping it does what?
Feel satisfied.
Feels good, right? And it's justice, right? It's justice. Okay, very, very nice. Now, what would be if we looked at the spiral and tried to find a more direct route, right? So there's, the event happened, and you called Amazon, and you got your refund.
Mhm.
So you could have probably gotten there on a less rocky road, okay? And then the person who put the thing out that you got eventually, which could have happened, whenever it was, that was going to happen one way or the other. Maybe your signs helped, did it? You think, or maybe not? It was irrelevant.
People
They
got
would-
mad. They took it down.
They took the signs out. Okay, but so the box probably would have made its way there anyway. Okay, so what are some of the insights and things that you took away from that? Very, very natural, common. I do that all the time.
No, like I kind of realized that like I overreacted. I think it was more I was upset because I needed it at that moment. Whereas like maybe if I needed that dress 2 weeks from now, I'd be like, oh, this sucks, but like let me just call Amazon, tell them what's going on, and like figure it out. But I guess like in that moment, I was just like, I need this. Like there's no other option.
Right. Well,
there is another option. I could have gone to the mall, but like.
well, or whatever you did, but also it's, it's like I need this or else everything will fall apart, and that's sort of where I need this goes, and it's the everything else falls apart. That this will be a terrible thing if this doesn't happen. That's the story we tell ourselves. Obviously, it would be good to have. Obviously, it would have been appropriate to receive. Obviously, you did everything just fine. So where might you have, do you think that, so first of all, we could say that because of your mindfulness practice and your awareness and you have a lot of insight and awareness naturally, and you've been practicing mindfulness, it could have looked a lot worse, right? So there's always what it wasn't that we tend not to offer ourselves the benefit of, what it wasn't. And that's huge. So whenever you find yourself in a situation where the spiral or the snow globe really gets you, take heart of what it might have been that it wasn't. But where in that spiral might you have part of the spiral discussion is that somewhere along the way we could skate off the spiral, right? And really, anywhere along the way, we could get off the spiral. We don't necessarily have the capacity to do so. It's like in that moment asking the really upset child, just everything's, it's like, no, it's not. But we have this other part of us that knows better, right? Or at least can, soothe ourselves in a certain way. So what might you have done if you could go through that process again? What might you have done to catch it and skate off the spiral a little sooner? This isn't just a hypothetical. You handled it quite fine.
I guess like, in the sense of finding another avenue, it was hard, but I guess like, for me, what helps is like box breathing.
Okay, so one
sometimes.
thing that we could do when we realize that we're in that state is to do box breathing. Go on.
I'd probably like do box breathing for like, maybe at least like 3 minutes. I could have just like, instead of overreact, like just like sit down, because I kind of realized with time it passes, like I'm not going to bed still mad, like you just kind of dissipates.
Right,
like,
with time, it passes. This is really important. When somebody comes into your office and says something and you have a spiral, to know right then that in time, what you're feeling will pass. And the question is, can you find a way in that moment to get to the point where it has dissipated enough that whatever you choose to do about it or not do about it is more helpful than unhelpful? Because goodness knows the unhelpful things that people do, because they really are in that moment motivated to feel better. Very nice. And then if you have the thought, I need this now, people are incompetent, and we could add Jared's, this always happens to me. None of those are useful thoughts. They probably aren't entirely true, right? So there's something there, but it's not always, and it's not everyone completely, and it's not like it's going to be the end of everything. Though there certainly is a kernel underlying it that's true. What could we do if we notice those thoughts in that moment? What's a practice? What's one of the but-for pauses that we could do when we notice that we're having these thoughts that are, we don't know for sure that they're not correct, but they certainly are fueling something that's not helpful.
I sometimes think of gratitude, to be quite honest, because it's I'm getting mad over a dress when there's people who don't even have clothes or don't even have those type of issues that I have.
Correct. And so that's a wonderful thing to raise, to bring gratitude into those moments. And by the way, if everyone else in the world had clothes, if we lived in such a place that everyone had everything and it wasn't about comparing your circumstance to someone else and feeling grateful that yours is somehow more fortunate, you pushed a button on a computer that exists in this world, and the next day a dress is going to land inside your package room with people who are there to, even if everybody had that luxury of that, there's to be grateful of that. So your gratitude, however we look at it, and what I'm suggesting is it isn't even necessarily in relationship to somebody else, although I would imagine every one of us has to varying degrees an extraordinary amount of gratitude in terms of the good fortune and in many ways just luck of our circumstance. But then there's also just the, oh my God. So yes, that's a wonderful thing. And what would that be? What would the taking a moment and feeling some and cultivating some gratitude in our mindful living flow? What would that be?
Would it be a settling technique?
Wonderful. And what would box breathing be?
I forgot to
It's a settling technique.
Oh.
Right, it would be, one might be relaxed, one might be observed, but it's a settling technique. And you're drawing upon the settling techniques in the moment that life happens, the spiral, and we're resisting to some extent, which is why we're caught in that state and the things that we can do. Very, very nice. What else? Who else had a spiral moment? Yes, Rich.
Okay, so I was originally going to read what happened last week, but when I thought back, I realized I had a spiral event this past weekend.
Excellent.
Me and some friends decided to get a cabana and enjoy the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with probably one of my best friends, and I went to the bar to get food and drinks.
Yes.
I come back and he's disappeared.
Friend's gone.
Friend's gone.
Okay.
Me thinking, oh, he probably went to the restroom. So I text my friend, yo, where you at? He says, dipped.
He dipped. That means he took left.
You left.
Okay. So, friend dips, right? That's what happened. Friend dips. Okay. Go on.
Look, where'd you go?
Okay, so this is during real-time
Yes,
conversation with
this is
them.
real-time
Okay.
conversation.
Now, just so you know, in case you weren't aware, somewhere in between that real-time conversation back and forth.
Yeah, I'm starting to like get antsy.
Okay. So you asked, where did you go?
Yes.
And
He says, I'm on a yacht.
I'm on the yacht. Okay, so now we have so notice that what's nice about Rich's example so far is we've got the friend dips and there's a spiral. That leads to asking the question, where'd you go? On the yacht. Bigger spiral. Is that a bigger spiral? That was a bigger spiral.
And by the way,
Okay,
this is a text exchange. I remember it.
okay, gotcha, yes.
And that's when I started to get mad, angry. I started to feel hot, because we have our friendship. We never leave we never leave each other.
Never.
We never leave a man behind.
No, no.
And I got left behind.
You got left behind. So what were some thoughts that were coming on? You took us directly to the charged emotions.
Some thoughts were, I gotta let him know how I feel.
Gotta let him know how I feel.
So I started to send a bunch of text messages.
Might there be other thoughts that you had that weren't as, I'm not trying to, generate things that aren't real, but I gotta let him know how I feel is a very civilized statement about.
Some thoughts were, how dare you?
How dare you? Right.
Like, you're rude.
Right. Okay, so you have these thoughts that perhaps.
Other thoughts that I can't say out loud.
Yeah, no, yes. And then the feeling, and sometimes we're not even aware, it happens just so fast. It's like you went to the emotions because sometimes the thoughts are so quick and they do set in motion the emotions. So you had the feelings, you had the sensations in the body, you were saying you felt hot and?
Felt hot, fists clenched. When I started shaking a little bit.
Yeah, okay. And then your?
The overreaction.
Overreaction.
Started to send a million text messages.
Million text messages.
And then.
Like what were the text messages? Things like.
Things like, how dare you?
Okay, so you put your thought in, you shared
put
your
some
thought,
thoughts.
that's a nice thing.
Put some of the thoughts that I can't say out loud into
Yes.
text messages as
Okay,
well.
okay, good. And this was intended to improve the relationship,
This-
enhance your likelihood of getting on the yacht or having your friend jump off and swim back. Right? This was all, why was it that we were sending a million texts, some of which we can't even?
It was more of when I asked who he was with, and he told me some names. And he told me names of like individuals that he went on the yacht with. And it
Yes.
was-
Oh, this is part of the text exchange.
Yeah, like I started having the overreactions, just the normal text, and then he told me who he went on the yacht with.
Oh, I see, the million texts have replies.
And that's when I got more pissed.
Like who's on the yacht? Like
Yeah,
all the
because
other-
it's people that I would assume I would be over.
Yes.
That he would choose me.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
So that's
Abandoned, like you
yeah.
said, left alone. Right.
So that's when my thoughts got more
And the reason why you were sending the text, though, what was the motivation?
motivation. Just let him know how I feel. Because at that point,
Right.
I knew he wasn't getting off the yacht.
Well, you're probably good at, well, we all are good at making somebody feel guilty. So, but what would be the reason why we would send a million texts And,
Because I was hurt.
and you wanted to feel,
I wanted to feel satisfaction.
Some
I wanted
satisfaction.
to just stop, like, because I did feel angry, I felt disappointed. I was
Yeah.
hurt. I wanted that feeling to stop.
right, okay. And so we do things to, right? And there's other things you could then, of course, just turn around and seen, oh, there's a bar. I'll spend my day there, just, and that'll, maybe that's a good, I mean, it can be a nice thing to do, but it could also be to feel better, right? Which is it, right? Is it unto itself intrinsically worthwhile, or is it to feel better? And of course, there's many ways that we can choose to feel better, some of which are settling techniques that can be useful. So, okay, so, well, first of all, let me just say, that's terrible. Oh, I feel like my heart goes out to you. That's like, that's,
Thank you. I was really hurt.
yeah, I'll bet you earlier, your friend, what, he just was like, look, what was you want me to do? I just had this opportunity, you weren't here, I had to make a decision. No, because he didn't even text you.
He didn't even text me.
Because you know why? Because I bet he thought if he did, like, oh, it was like one more person could come, and if he sort of got you or something, it would ruin the, why was this? Is he still your pal? Yes, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So what is your, so what might you have done? So first of all, once again, what might it have been could have been very different, right? In terms of your friendship and how your friendship evolved, or maybe didn't gain. What you did to try to sort of comfort yourself or feel better. Well, I mean, there's a how it played out in your here, and you're speaking to it seems to have been relatively. It was useful in ways, but it may not have been optimal. Right? Useful, so let's never forget that, could have been more optimal. So where along the way might you draw upon anything we've been talking about in class to maybe short circuit some of that?
When I started having overreactions, my girlfriend talked me down a little bit. I took some deep breaths. I realized that even though he left me, there were other options that I could choose from. So I ended up just making a reservation somewhere else and going there.
Okay. And then what happened? How did it play out?
And I had a good night.
Yeah.
But then the next day, my friend texted me, "Are you really mad?" I didn't respond.
No. Right. Are you really mad? Right. Friend text. Are you really mad? Another event. Thought that went through your mind was. That even though I was still a little mad, but like, I would rather have that conversation in person. Okay, so one thought might have been, I want to have this conversation in person.
Yes.
Good. And that's, again, useful. Might there also have been another thought that also helped explain why you didn't give him the satisfaction of the response you knew you wanted?
Also, like, I knew I overreacted. I knew that the previous text messages, I normally wouldn't have sent it if I had gone through my settling techniques originally to, I was mindful of the situation, my surroundings. So I was disappointed in myself, to be honest. Okay, so then that's another event, right? And that's now we're getting closer to even more of the long-term opportunity, right? We do something and we overreact in a way that then we begin to judge ourselves. Right? We begin to judge ourselves. This is what I'm sharing. Think about all the ways in which it was handled much more skillfully than it could have otherwise been handled. Let's focus on that, because then the judgment, if there is a judgment, runs in the other direction. But yes, then we begin to feel bad for whatever reason, and that becomes its own event that then has its thoughts and feelings and sensations, and now it turns into a whole nother thing. Okay. Well, I'm glad it worked out okay. And any other takeaways in terms of what we would do next time? The reason why we sort of explore this is because this will happen again. It sounds like it will happen tomorrow, right? What?
It will.
Right. And so how do we navigate that? Do we want to have the same old name on a piece of paper, putting it up? It's like, what they say about doing the same thing every time something happens and it doesn't change anything. And what would we do a little differently? Because the idea of having somebody we care about act in a way that is sort of furthering their self-interest, whether it's intentional or not, and or just leaving us, it's going to happen again in little ways and sometimes big ways. So it'd be nice to be able to navigate that. Any other takeaways.
Next time, I think what I would do is just do some settling techniques and then also observe. That's the main thing. If I would have observed my surroundings, taken everything in, I would have realized I set other friends there. You know, I had Larry there. I had some other good friends as well that I could spend the night with.
Yeah.
And it would have ruined my mood.
Yeah, okay. And this is a nice reminder that we practice noticing our thoughts. We practice getting in touch with the shifting landscape of our sensations in our body. We practice gratitude or kindness and connection. We practice so that in those moments, we have more capacity, which you're already speaking to, even recognizing that I would consider to be the most challenging of the settling techniques, which is observe. Because observe is really a little mindfulness moment, right? Just to observe. That's asking a lot. It's easier to say, I'm going to do something to feel better. Observing isn't necessarily going to have as much punch of feeling better, because you become, at least for a little bit, more aware of what you're experiencing. And if we spend a lot of time noticing what we're experiencing, in those moments, we have much more capacity to have what we can call equanimity in the midst of those moments and be able to pivot brilliantly and skillfully to observing, as well as reaching out to people for, for support and whatever else may come along. Very nice. Very nice. I want to move in a moment to sandwich practices. Before we do, is there one other person that would like to share their spiral? And importantly, so far, know that hopefully there's connecting dots that we practice. And by now, there's probably one practice in particular you're zeroing in on. This is what I'm encouraging you. We practice that for these moments. But then, of course, when these moments hit, as they will, no matter how much we practice, we have settling techniques that we can then bring in. And the more quickly we're aware that there's a spiral happening, you're speaking to being aware, and then almost having the willingness to just sort of sit with it for a little bit. We can then catch it sooner so that we don't need as much settling. And when we draw upon this, and we're more likely to draw upon the settling technique. Okay, very, very nice. So these work together. And then, if we're feeling angry and frustrated, we can turn our attention and say, let me notice this anger and frustration. Like, let me in that moment just, wow, there's anger. And then, of course, once we start turning our attention to anger, we're really going to be turning our attention to sensations in the body. And the more we've been practicing the body scan, the more we're able to more comfortably experience anger. When it just comes at us, really surprised, or frustration or disappointment or whatever it may be. Is there one more spiral? Jared.
Sounded excited. Yeah, so this week,
But what'd you say?
you sounded excited when I said that.
You're being like sarcastic?
Well,
So Scott says, Jared, but it's more like, Jared. And then you have some thoughts.
yeah,
And
that
feelings.
could be its own spiral.
What?
You're right.
Well, that's exactly right. Everything. Like all during the day, if you could, you'd see like, what are these little things wisping out from me? They're spirals, right? And by the way, when you texted your friend, where are you? And he goes, I dipped. You think he had, and then the first of your lobbying of text messages starts, do you think he begins to have his own? Right? And we could take his spiral, right? Now you've got two spirals going with people who care about and love each other, right? Yet still we have these spirals. Okay, and so it's nice that you brought up the gratitude, and then that's where it is like, what's your friend's name? Or just, what's his first initial? M? For mindfulness. You could use a little more. Or maybe it's M for me. It's me and my yacht. So M, we could also, if we've been practicing the connection practice, even though it seems so counterintuitive, what might we offer M in that moment? That we're here, they're on the yacht having a great time. And for whatever reason, there's this thing called sympathetic joy, when you can, it's a higher order kind of capacity that we all have, which is to feel happy for somebody else's good fortune. But in that moment, it was, I bet it did come around though, and you did sort of say, you know what, I'm glad you got to get on the yacht.
Yeah, I started feeling bad. Every time we send him a text message, he sent me a heart.
Yes. Because now here's the, we won't get into this, but of course, he sent you the heart, we would say, so that you would feel what?
Kind of guilt.
No, it's only, well, if he does, then that's a manipulation. But maybe M stands for manipulation. But if anything, he might be sending you a heart because he sort of feels bad and wants you to feel better, right? Now, maybe that wasn't M's intention, but in another, but why would, if it's true, why would M want you to feel better?
He feels guilt.
And if he feels guilt and you feel better, then he feels better. So it all comes back to, which brings us to Jared and,
Yes.
Yes.
As we all know, registration is coming up next week.
yes.
And so I went to just check out the classes and like go and make sure that I didn't have any holds or anything like that. And then I basically found out that I had like a $2,000 charge from on my cane link. And, because it's like, basically I saw that and I was like, oh my God.
Okay, so event. You were like, I'm going to check out the classes.
Yeah.
It's a great day.
But I was sad that there were no more mindfulness classes for me to take.
Are you gonna get on cycles?
I'm thinking about which way to go, because Jared is an interesting person. Well, that's very thoughtful of you to say. I enjoy having you in the mindfulness classes, to say the least. And I hope you can learn to befriend that sadness and
The mindful spaces.
mindful spaces. They're not going anywhere. Okay, so you're checking out the classes, and all of a sudden, the unexpected, unwanted, undesirable. This is the telltale signs. You just get this like rude awakening, $2,000. Okay, so that's the event.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened from there?
I like had like a mini freak out moment, and then I.
Whoa, you can't. You jumped way over it here.
Sure. Okay, so I felt like strong.
You jumped over here.
I thought, oh my God, like, how am I gonna pay this? And like, was like kind of freaking out.
Okay, you keep getting to the freaking out. Okay, right. You had these thoughts.
It was just a big freak out.
Yeah,
But,
I
I had thoughts of like,
Operative word, freak out. I get it, but
Yeah.
hang on. Because you see, what we're interested in is we're interested possibly in attenuating the intensity of the freak out. So when you say, and I freaked out, you're jumping to the end of the game, and I want us to explore what's happening along the way, because it's our being more aware of what's happening along the way that changes the outcome. Okay, so you had these thoughts, you began to articulate those
so I
thoughts.
definitely had a why me thought.
Okay, and why me? And then you had these feelings that you did just begin to
Yeah,
speak
just
to?
frustration and like rage, and
Okay.
then like just, I was really mad.
Yes, for understandable reasons. And
Yeah.
then sensations in the body?
Like my blood was boiling, like I was like, my mind was racing, I was like, oh my God, like this is a lot of money, like, kind of just thinking like, yeah, my mind was just racing, trying to
Okay.
think of how I would kind of make it work for the month.
Right, so let's see this unfolding. Life happens, it sees this information on the webpage. It registers unpleasant. There's resistance, understandably. Now, bear in mind, when we say resistance, we're speaking to resisting the moment that's happening. That's the resistance we're talking about, the moment that's happening. In that moment, it's you versus reality. You are never going to win. You're never going to change. It's never going to change. That is what's happening. We're not talking about what happens next. We're talking about the moment that's happening. Okay. And usually it goes quickly if we could have the next moment of clarity. But that's not the way it plays out, because as we resist, it dims the light bulb of awareness, and we get caught in this spiral. And what you've just spoken to, the thoughts, feelings, and sensations, that's a moment, if it's not clear yet, to go, oh, there's a spiral. Let me pay attention. Let me sit down if I can, which you probably were, and let me actually just take a few moments and notice this spiral unfolding in me. And the noticing itself begins the process of the spiral changing, just the noticing itself. But it's so unpleasant, and we keep having thoughts, that it just gets us out of our seat to do something to feel better. But we do want to take action to be helpful, because there's something to attend to. There's definitely something to attend to figure out why, to minimize it getting worse, or to realize that it's an error and to approach whatever it is. There's something to do. Okay, so go on, and then you freak out.
Yeah, so I guess also one of my thoughts was like, I don't like for doing that to me.
I know.
And so there was a message like right under the hold that was like, oh, have any concerns, call us here. So I was like, all right, I will. And I was ready to go to battle.
Yes.
And I called them kind of in like a fit of rage. And
Yes. So this would be the reaction, right? Hi, it's me, Jared. How you doing?
Yeah.
Hope you're having a nice day. I'm so grateful that there was the phone number on the page so that I didn't have to go searching it out. I'm calling because I'm feeling distressed about something. I'm really nervous about something that I just saw. It's unexpected, and maybe it's right, and I have to figure out what to do, which is which is already causing me enough stress. I'm hoping that it's not, and so I'm calling you because I am concerned. Yes, you all nailed my emotion. I am concerned. And then they would say, oh, finally, somebody who's not angry and upset. At least for a moment. But that's not what they got, was it?
No, it wasn't.
What did they get?
I called them up and I was like, I just saw this charge, registrations next week, because basically I have a scholarship, and what doesn't cover or what's not covered by that, I take out a loan for it. And they said that tuition increased and the loan was locked in before I got it.
Let's not get caught up in the content. I
Yeah.
know it's really useful to tell the story about what's happened. It's almost cathartic
Yeah.
to say it.
But
But
so
let's
basically,
zero in on,
They
yes.
said there's nothing you can do about it, and then I just
Okay, and that's another event.
Yeah.
Just as that spiral is potentially, if they go, oh, we're so sorry, Jared. There's nothing we can do about it, but I'm a billionaire.
Yeah.
Consider it done. You're good to go, right? Spiral gone, life is great. But no, they say, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
And another spiral starts. Unwanted, maybe not as unexpected,
Frustration.
undesirable, frustration, and another spiral begins, so go on.
Yeah, so they said there's nothing you can do about it, and you have to pay it by this week if you want to register for classes.
Okay.
And just sent me into all you people do is steal my money, basically how much more are you gonna squeeze out of me? And I was kind of told them that.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, sorry, have a good day. And then it just made me
Yes, because
Like
they
I
weren't,
was-
because guess what happened? When you called with your understandable
yeah.
agitation, then they have an irate customer. They're like, yes, and I am but they have an irate customer. And they've got their thoughts, oh God,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe, and then so we've got spirals, but you're over the phone, you're talking to people, you can't see them, they can't see you. You're coming from an understandable place, who knows where they're coming from. I know they want to help, but, everyone, help only has their orders. So how did it resolve itself? I mean, just bottom
I
line.
kind of just took a moment to accept it and just be like, all right, I'm just gonna have to do it.
Okay,
It's
okay.
just part of life.
Part of life, right, cost of doing business.
Yeah, it was kind of just I put the phone down, and I actually went and I went to the gym and went in the sauna and was sitting in there. I was like, all right, you know
At your
what,
happy place.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna just pay it and move on, because it's they basically were what, no matter, even if you defer the payment.
You're getting into the
gonna have to pay
content.
it.
You're getting into the
That
content.
was, it was what it was.
That's
So
right. Okay.
That's why I just kind of was okay, I'll pay it and wake up the next day and live my life.
Okay, you could wake up the next moment as well. With your
Yeah.
life. Okay, right, so you bound to that, you made a decision to just sort of, as unpleasant as it was for a lot of reasons. Okay, so there was a whole lot of agitation, right? Now, one of the reasons why we're interested in looking at spirals is because can you imagine a different situation? This is just we're not going to explore this, just a different situation where you would find something out and you would have a very similar spiral. So it's not about that situation. It's about being met with something that then has this spiral activity with probably very similar patterns of thoughts, across situations, feelings across situations, sensations in the body, and perhaps ways of overreacting or reacting. And again, there could have been so many ways that could have been so much more challenging for you and others. And so kudos to you, just for the way you handled it. What might you do a little differently next time, if you would want to do something differently?
I definitely am a reactive person. I felt like I immediately reacted. Like the second I saw it, I was like, I'm calling someone and yelling at them.
Right.
And I just, like, moving forward, I think I should take a little more time to do maybe some line breathing or kind of sit there and like actually understand what's going on before I just like react and try to solve it without really understanding what's happening.
Okay, that's very thoughtful the way you framed that, and I want to just add to it. And to have it where the exact same thing happens, but it doesn't trigger as much of a miserable set of moments for you. It's not like you have to necessarily figure something out to have less of a reactive charge. It can be the same situation happening with a less reactive charge. So, like when, oftentimes when something happens and we're very quick, like the fire just push, and I can assure you, you're not alone. And I can assure you, I can relate to that. Body scan on a regular basis has, in my experience, an enormously influential impact in those moments. Because it's not like it's not like we don't wish that we had an alternate path available to us, a more reflective, settling oriented way. It's that we, in that moment, don't realize that that's there because the light bulb gets so dim so fast that we're just in this highly reactive state and it catches us unaware. So the more we practice things so that in the moment it actually has it, wouldn't it be wonderful if you get that kind of news? Because you will get that news with a judge that issues a ruling. And it's totally, and it's wrong. It's literally wrong. And sometimes your client's not going to want to, or the appeal is just like, this is it. Where we do say, hi, I'm Jared. And we're not it could take a little bit of like forcing ourselves to just sort of tamp down, but to have it in some ways where we are somewhat different. And again, there could be so much more of that, so much more. So I want to really share with you, kudos to you. And then kudos for going out and just actually doing something which was a settling technique. The exercise and you got to the sauna. That's hugely important. All right. Thank you, Jerry. Yes?
I wanted to say, I know with it's different because it's
Oh, you're getting caught up in the content.
No, I wanted to say that sometimes if it's another situation, if you're nicer, they're more receptive towards helping you. Whereas if you answer abruptly, they're less willing to help you. So I worked at a store, and when someone would get mad at me, and it's not even my fault, I would be less receptive into helping them. But if they were nice, I would give them a discount.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's a
I know
fascinating
there's a
thing.
part of you.
Well, it would be nice if a person were just doing the thing they were supposed to do regardless, right? So that what you could yell, you could be sweet, but they would, I guess now with computers answering phones, we're getting more of that perhaps. But then that ability to connect and to have creative solutions. You want in our reading with this week. It's a negotiation in a way. You're calling them. They've got whatever wiggle room they've got that you're hoping to maximize what you can get out of it. And we know that when emotions become negative, the research finds that people see less creative solutions and opportunities. So, right, there's a self-interest in saying hi. And by the way, if you can ever begin this is just, for whatever it's worth, I could really use your help. People want to help, right? So it's interesting, right? But I would imagine that you also probably had brought more calmness and civility to it than you might otherwise have and other people would have.
Yeah, I just, I don't know, I definitely have had something that I kind of have gone by for a while. It's the loudest gear gets the oil first when you're talking to customer service people. And I don't know, sometimes it's worked out, sometimes it hasn't, but definitely more mindful ways to go about it.
Well, and I would share with you the prospect, and of course I could be mistaken, because some people will be like, I don't need this, just give him what he wants. that when it did work out, it could have worked out as well or even better.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know. Okay, we're going to take a break in just a few moments. Before we do, when we come back, we're going to look at sandwich practices. The reason you have this, and I want you to maybe when you get back and before we formally start, I would like you to begin to do this is now we're taking this to another level, and for you to take what you learned this week from your experience and start to put in here what will be this week's practice, when will you do it, and hopefully it's relatively succinct and simple. By now, it would be like, oh, I'm going to practice this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to, so have it where when we leave today, you've filled in, and you can use last week's as the model, and all you're doing is you're just refining, based on your own experience, what's a practical practice schedule for this week, where you're choosing whatever you're choosing, and you're going to be writing about those in your paper. Okay, so that's just on your own, but we're going to, when you get back a little early perhaps, or however you might want to do that, because the goal is to have it where when you leave today, you've got it already done so that you can put it somewhere and not have it where it's just sitting somewhere and waiting to be done, and then on Wednesday you sort of figure it out, and that's just not the intention here, because this is entirely for you. So when we go outside, let's do this. It's about 7 till 11. So at 11:05, so in 12 minutes. Well, here's what I'd like for us to do actually today. Because next week we're going to be at the art museum. We're going to be doing walking back and forth and things like that. Let's meet at 10 after. Okay, so that's 17 minutes. So technically that's 5 minutes more than would be the normal break that we would have. Find your present moment pivot point. Literally go to the place where you would be coming in or leaving. So it's just the perimeter of the law school. For me, as I've shared, it's that by the library, between the library and Einstein's, when you walk out to where I park. But it could be anywhere around here. But when you come to law school, you're approaching from somewhere. Get to that place where you're approaching with your phone, stand there and take a picture, and then send me that picture. Okay? It's your present, what is it? Your what? It's a present moment pivot point. Because for the next couple weeks you're going to be diligently landing there, intentionally, for a few moments. Okay, see you all. And also, last week, that chocolate cookie thing seemed to be, there was nothing left. So I went today to get another one. And I was going to put on it, I'll say what I was going to put on it, but it's not going to start the way it seems, finish the way it starts. It's going to say, happy birthday to M, because I thought your friend deserved, like, come on, happy birthday to, what do you think was going to be here? Begins with an M. Me. Happy birthday to me. So that we would all be able to sing happy birthday to me. And so we'll do that next week. So next week there will be a chocolate chip cake. Apparently you have to order them in advance. It's going to say happy birthday to me. But here's the thing. Who's singing happy birthday? For your little singing that you'll be doing, where you'll be singing happy birthday to me. Who's doing the singing? There's a million ways to answer it. Just okay, but you yourself.
Me.
No, me's not doing the singing. There's a million ways to answer it in one way that's wrong. But of course, it could be that that's right. But who's the one? If I'm singing happy birthday to Harrison, is Harrison's doing the singing? No, I am. Okay. So if I'm singing happy birthday to me, is me doing the singing? Huh?
I said yes, if you're singing to yourself.
That's what I was.
You're singing to me.
Oh, to you.
No, you're singing to you.
I don't know what's
Me
happening.
too.
I don't know.
Consider the possibility that the you that's aware of and engaging in that deliberate practice is at a distance from the me in you that's being sung to. And in many ways, when we find ourselves in spiral moments, we're doing a settling technique to help settle me, right? The me that's agitated, the me that's resisting, the me. But it's not me who's doing, the me is not aware, right? Me is not aware. Something larger than me is aware. Me is aware of this capacity that's aware, is certainly aware of the me that's, this is the snow globe. Me is in the center of the snow globe. But what's aware of the snow globe? Me is caught up in the spiral. But how are we aware of the spiral? So when we sing Happy Birthday to Me, and for the coming weeks, notice how it is that we step out of this is the wedge of awareness. This is the psychological distance that's emerging between being caught in our experience and having a much larger range of possibilities available to us in terms of how we respond to our experience. All right, see you all. We'll take it a couple minutes after, the 10 after, but approximately 10 after. I mean, try to come back by around 10 after, but find your present moment, pivot point, take a picture of it. You can text it to me later. Yeah, very important to our papers is the distinction between, and being able to regularly distinguish between challenges and obstacles. So here's a reminder. Challenges are here, and obstacles are here. And this is just the languaging that I sort of put together. There's nothing new about this discussion, but just the way we're using these terms in particular. So in life, whether we're sitting and doing a mindfulness practice, or whether we're in class, or whether we're at work, there will be challenges. So and in particular, if you think about the paper that you're writing, the topic you're writing on, what's a challenging situation that would be relevant to your paper topic? You don't have to get into your paper topic, but what would be a challenging situation so that the reader of your paper, who picked up your paper because they found something about your topic that was useful, and you would say early on, here's a classic example of a situation you may find yourself in where here's a challenging situation. And they go, oh yeah, I can relate to that because they picked up your paper, they understand your topic, they can relate to it. And you're actually going to write something that's germane and give examples. What would be a challenging situation? Yes, Harrison.
This is a little different, but I think it's a commonality that's probably in all papers. The challenge of like, okay, I want to practice mindfulness, but it's hard, it's not easy.
Okay, so let's put that aside. That sort of like is a meta consideration. So you're right, it runs through all. So there is the challenge, which we'll come back to, because it's an interesting way of approaching it, of wanting to practice mindfulness and finding it to be difficult. Okay, we can maybe come back to that, certainly very pertinent. But you're writing about mindfulness and blank. And if you focus on the blank, what would be a situation that's challenging? Yes?
Getting like an email from your boss critiquing an
Okay.
assignment.
Okay, so critical email. Email, receiving an email, that's critical. Okay, there's a challenge. Now what's an obstacle? And we could say that receiving an email that carries content that we would call critical. I put this in parentheses because really what's happening is you received an email. Different people will assess the nature of that content differently. Some people will be like, oh, they gave me helpful advice. They gave me an important pointer, you know. But yeah, many of us will default to, that's critical, that doesn't feel good. That's the challenge. What's an obstacle? That's directly, this is important, an obstacle that's directly as a result of that challenge.
Just having overreacting is like the end of it, but having a whole bunch of negative thoughts.
Okay, nice. So what would be a negative thought in that moment?
From a personal perspective, you might be saying like, wow, everything I do is just garbage.
Okay. Everything I do is garbage. And possibly you would say, I'm going to get
Fire.
fired. Okay. Okay, and that would be the thought run. What might a feeling be that accompanies that?
Anger,
Okay.
sadness, disappointment, stress.
Okay. Right, okay. So this is the challenge. Getting an email that's, we take as critical. And then here's a set of obstacles. Okay, very, very nice. I'm dancing around this that's critical because sometimes it will be like, you did a terrible job. It's almost like undeniable, but even that we could say they're having a bad day because they didn't frame it usefully. So, getting underneath it is its own interesting practice of seeing things more clearly. But certainly receiving an email with with feedback then can lead to this. Now, would 100 people see this the same way, receiving an email? Would 100 people have that experience? They received an email. I'm phrasing it, they received an email with feedback. Everybody would see that. I received an email with feedback. This is the telltale sign of a challenge. There's very little alternate understanding of it. Everybody gets the challenge the same way. And if we say I received an email that says I suck, well, we want to have it where we look at the challenge in a way that truly is descriptive of what actually took place. Okay. Then we can explain aspects of it that lead to that larger resistance. But this is the challenge. Now these obstacles, is everybody going to have the exact same obstacles? No. Everyone's going to have this. Everyone's different ways that they are who they are will have this. Okay. What's another challenging situation that can emerge in relationship? We're talking about, because this is meant to be helpful for your papers, something that connects to the subject matter. So if Anthony raised something that might connect to the subject matter of the paper he's going to write, where a reader is like, maybe it's mindfulness and receiving critical feedback, or mindfulness and managing feedback more effectively, whatever that is. So it's like, oh, I want to be able to do that. And you give an example, which is, you're at work and you receive an email that says you did this wrong, and this wrong. And mindfulness can be helpful. Is mindfulness going to make the person send you emails that don't say that? Not necessarily. There's no guarantee. So the challenge doesn't change. And everyone gets the challenge the same way. This is important because when you're writing your paper, you want to be very clear in terms of how you articulate the situation. Because the more subjective your interpretation is, the more you're going to dilute the power of what you're going to offer. This is where all the action is. Because this can completely change. Right? And wouldn't it be nice to have this? And thank you for the feedback. Could we meet tomorrow or when convenient for you and you could share with me how I could do better, or share with me your thoughts on my performance, and to somehow embrace that with courage and confidence that everything's going to be okay, no matter what happens. So this is really, this we could call pain, if you want to remember our pain and suffering conversation. This is painful. That is to receive email that we treat as critical, or any feedback. But this is much more optional. This is suffering. This is the suffering that takes this matter-of-fact experience and turns it into the kind of thing that just has us go home and go, or we're defeated, or we're exhausted, or we've made things worse somehow by avoiding. Why didn't you get back to me when I sent you that email? It's like, you just made it worse because you didn't want to go there. Or why'd you respond with, I can't believe you sent me this email. This is a horrible work environment. When, up until that moment, it was actually, whatever. That's not to say what you should or shouldn't do, but it's just to say the ways that we can, if this is calling the shots, we're not likely to respond as skillfully. Okay. What's one more example based on what you plan on writing about where there's a challenging situation? Yeah,
I don't know if mine's too big, but handling urges, because I'm gonna be writing about addiction.
okay, very nice, very important. So what would be a event where the urge would then come into being? We could look at it at a deeper level and say the urge is the event, but we don't, but that's a deeper analysis than I think we need to do at this moment. So what is the triggering event? Or it can be?
I wanna say like receiving an email, but I guess I'm stuck on that. Just
Yeah,
like-
like another kind of thing, it's,
Yeah, like, I don't know, learning. I mean, in the context of my paper, I don't know where I'm gonna go with it, but like an urge could be like wanting to drink.
okay, right, but what would be the event that you find yourself experiencing, like receiving an email, that then leads to the wanting to drink? Or somebody else might be writing about mindful eating and, then wanting to eat in a way that isn't necessarily as constructive or helpful as we might like. What's a kind of situation that could trigger it?
So it could be like an exchange with a family member that is unpleasant.
Okay, so a family member exchange that we could say, this is again where that doesn't go well, right? Okay. And then what might be the obstacle? Now, we're not yet, see here with Anthony's example, I'm going to get fired. It could be like immediately running out of the office, not doing the assignment, and letting somebody else know, I'm still looking for that job. Like this complete, kind of abandonment of what's taking place to try to do something to feel better or get some relief or whatever it might be, which could arguably be an overreaction, when in fact the person was just wanting you to grow as a professional and wanted the memo to be rewritten so it could be more effective for the client, and didn't want to do it for you because they know you could do it, whatever that might be. So there is the overreaction, and here, and you want to be gentle with this term in terms of especially matters of addiction where, it's like, did I really have a choice? But we can work on these things. So it could be that here it would be, nasty email back, or here it could be withdrawal and going home to sleep just because it's too much, right? This would be the thing that could happen as a result of it. We could say the unskillful or the less helpful reaction. So what happened, and so here it's drinking, as you laid it out, drinking, in a way that's not necessarily helpful. What would be an obstacle that might emerge when there's that family member exchange, and then there's that impulse to drink? What are some of the obstacles that are going on internally? Because this tends to be external, not always, but tends to be. And this is almost always internal. What might be an example of an internal obstacle?
It could be like an awareness that it's gonna make me feel better, so I have to do it.
Okay, so you mean a thought. The thought, drinking will feel better. Okay. Right, that's different than the way we're using it. Okay, good. So we could have thoughts. I need a drink. A drink will help me feel better, right? Stuff like that. Very, very nice. And what might be a feeling that emerges?
I don't know if like need is a feeling.
Need?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can. So yeah, we can maybe read more into that. But need. A need for
Relief.
Okay, need for relief. So if we have a need for relief, we might be feeling uncomfortable, and what might we say? So we can say uncomfortable. That's very general, but it's correct. We might be feeling
Anxious.
it could be an anxiousness, an anxiety. Okay, very nice. And then of course there's sensations in the body. This is very relevant when we get into impulses. So what could be a sensation in the body?
Like tenseness.
Okay, it could be a tenseness in the body. Okay. So this is why I'm sharing this with you, and I'll be putting up a video, and I'll also, as I said, send me a question, and I'll put up a short video that responds to that question based on anything we've learned in class or anything you're thinking about for your paper. So if a person is interested in a paper on mindfulness and how mindfulness can be helpful for addiction or for managing impulses, of course there's lots and lots of impulses, many of which can lead to destructive and counterproductive things, then they would probably be interested in saying, Lisa is at work and doing whatever, and things are going well, but then a family member calls and they begin to have a conversation and it doesn't go well, and then as a result, they end up calling up their friend and saying, hey, maybe tonight you want to go out for a drink, right? Or you want to join me now for a drink? And this happens really quickly. And then you're like, I'm going to share with you how it is that practicing mindfulness might be helpful. And that's where your paper's going. So having a this and having a this, very important. Meaning having a this and having a this is very important because you're setting out what we could call the problem, right? Probably should get something that's happening all the time in various ways, or happens enough, and we have this outcome that this, okay. Now, of course, you see that what we've just done is we've just sort of done in a more linear way an exploration of the spiral. There's the event, thoughts, feelings, and sensations. That's the obstacle. And then our overreactions. So you can look at this 1,000 different ways. It's always the same thing, ultimately. The reason why this is important, why I'm sharing this with you now as we're reinforcing this, is because mindfulness is not directed towards this. If you sit and you practice paying attention to your breath with the focused attention practice, or the body scan, or open monitoring, you will stop getting emails from people laying out things that you could do better. Either laying it out skillfully so that you receive it well because they sandwich it between a million platitudes, or they just come out with it because, no, that's not going to change at all. If you practice mindfulness, you will not get a phone call from a family member or at Thanksgiving have a conversation that goes south. You could practice forever. You could walk in like, my God, you're such a Buddha. Why would you say I'm a Buddha? And you just never know what's going to. So your paper and the challenge and the really usefulness that your paper will offer is to explain to people how practicing mindfulness and being more mindfully aware can change this. Can change this. And or if it doesn't change this, changes your ability to hold this, right? So that this changes because this is different, even though this is the same. Now, of course, if you have different kinds of responses to your boss, like, yes, I'll work on it right away, and then you give it to them, and then they say, much better, thank you. And then you say, hey, listen, when you have a chance, could we have a conversation? I really appreciate it. And they're like, yeah, sure. And then you say, I love working here. I think you're an amazing attorney. I've learned so much from you, and I want to keep learning from you. That email that you sent the other day, you don't need to do anything differently because you're in charge, but I just want to share with you that when you said this was a piece of crap, I just felt terrible. I felt like I was letting you down. I felt like I'm incompetent. And to the extent that you can share information in a way that doesn't leave me feeling that way, and you can do it the same way, that's okay. I think I would be even better at what I do in service of our shared interests, right? Now some people will be like, the moment you said you should do something different, and if you say should, it's going to create a problem. But many people, depending on how this done, will be like, thank you for letting me know. And it actually will change this. You'll still get the emails, and you'll still get content, but you could actually temper it. You're having a conversation with a family member, and you're like, by the way, 2 weeks ago when we had that blow up, I just want to share with you, I love, or whatever's truthful, I wouldn't encourage saying anything that's not truthful, our relationship really matters to me. It really matters to me. But I'm very sensitive to feeling judged. You, anybody else, and I would just appreciate if maybe you could take note of how you're phrasing something, and if you'd like me to do something, make a request rather than tell me, because if you had said, I would appreciate it if you would, as opposed to you need to, I would have been much more there for you. And then they may or may not get it, but maybe they would. And that's a part of communicating, which tends not to happen so easily. It's very hard to communicate skillfully when we're feeling this. And it's hard to communicate skillfully in general, yes.
For the challenges, should we not describe or like qualify them as like unpleasant or critical? And do we just say like receiving email from boss or family exchange? I noticed like you put in parentheses, like didn't go well. Like I'm not sure how we're
Right.
supposed
Well,
to.
this is up to you. This is a good question. What I'm hearing you say is, what I would say is this. You want to let the person know what the problem is, and then you want to have the guts of your paper explain how mindfulness practices can help. And so part of this, it's, receiving an email that made fun of me, receiving an email that said I was terrible. These are what?
Feelings?
Well, I don't know that I framed it as a feeling, but you could interpret it closely as a feeling. These are what?
The event.
Hmm?
The event.
Well, the event is receiving an email that had content that said I'm terrible, that said I can't do this job well. I wish I remembered that that everything I do is garbage, that I'm going to get fired. What are those? Those are the thoughts. Those are the judgments and thoughts we have about the thing we get. So the spiral is really kicking into gear here, early in our interpretation of the event. So yes, you want to flesh it out and explain it to the person, but you also want to explain it so that people can begin to go, oh, everything I do is garbage. If we're not aware we're having that thought, or I'm going to get fired, or oh my God, I just received an email. My boss, thinks I'm terrible at my job. Right? That's sort of like this part here. The boss thinks I'm terrible at my job is a thought we're having. It's a story that we're having about the experience. It might be true, probably not entirely true. Often it's not at all true. And if we are practicing focused attention, what are we more likely to be as a result of and you talk about this wonderfully, Andrew, what are we more likely to have at our disposal when we have a thought like, the boss says I'm terrible, I got this email, the boss just says I'm terrible. What are we more likely to have access to because we've been practicing, for example, the focused attention practice?
I guess just like better reason about what's going on.
Well, before that, yes, perhaps, but before that, if we, here's this like, I got an email, oh my God, boss thinks I'm terrible. I mean, if the boss says, I think you're terrible, then that is the event. An email received that said I'm terrible. But if the boss said, you could have done better, and we're like, oh, the boss thinks I'm terrible, the boss thinks I'm incompetent, then if we've been practicing focused attention among other things, what are we more likely, how is that moment in time likely to be a little different than if we haven't been practicing? Yeah, go ahead.
You're more likely to be aware of what actually they're saying, and that perhaps you could have done something like mechanically better with the assignment.
Okay,
But you'll be less looking into all the judgments and thoughts like, oh, I suck, or oh, this person thinks I'll never get it right, or things like
Okay,
that.
you're taking that quickly further along than we need to go at the moment. That may be certainly a part of your paper in terms of explaining why it's helpful too, as you said. And what were you going to say? So you nailed it with your first response. What were you going to
I was
say?
gonna say the light bulb of awareness.
Okay, the light bulb of awareness, which allows you to be aware of what? And then Andrew spoke to it.
Thought.
The thought. You were aware that you're having the thought. Because if you're aware that you're having a thought, that you've just made up. Because the boss didn't say it, it's not in the email. If you're aware that you're having that, and that's the beginning of a spiral, that's the beginning of a snow globe, then you can actually check in. You can do it from something as simple as, is this true? I'm going to get fired. Is this true? You can actually investigate the thought. This is where I heard you going. Right, okay. So in your paper, when you start explaining why the focused attention practice would be helpful or could be helpful, that's the level at which you're going to want to be addressing it. You practice focused attention, you become more aware of the thoughts that you're having. So then when you find yourself in a situation like this, and the spiral gets going, not that you'll be necessarily talking about spirals in that sense, you'll have your own way of just speaking to the experience in a very practical, matter-of-fact way. Then you can begin to explain why it is that the different practice can be useful. In the case of the impulses, this doesn't have to be your practice, but the body scan is a hugely helpful practice. Like you begin to feel, you get the news or whatever, or you see other people drinking or whatever it is, and you begin to like have thoughts like, and you begin to feel like this craving or however we want to frame it, and that craving is made up of tension and heat and maybe sweating and whatever it is. And if we've been practicing the body scan, we go, oh, okay. And then if we do maybe settling techniques, and that helps explain to the reader why it is that as this tension and tightness, etc., begins to kick into gear, like why would the mindfulness practice and or the settling techniques that you're sharing with them be helpful? And it's helpful because it addresses these. And this is why for this week, your assignment is underneath this to note, your topic is mindfulness and, in fact, why don't you take a moment and write down, paper topic, succinct, nice big letters, mindfulness and put it into 1 or 2 words. It's meant to be succinct. You know what it means. It's not telling me what it is. It's just a reminder to you. If you could put it into a word or 2, mindfulness and. And if you need 3 or 4, that's fine. But this isn't your subtitle. This is just your big picture. Mindfulness and receiving feedback. Mindfulness and cravings. And then put, not now, a pertinent challenge and a leading obstacle. So you can begin to think about this. What is a pertinent challenge and a leading obstacle, but not now. This is part of what you'll do. And then it's saying underneath that when you practice this week, the very practices that you'll be talking about in your paper, every time you practice, begin to think about that connection. Begin to breathe life into it. And of course, the mindfulness practice from last week is whatever your primary practice is, and the settling technique is whatever your settling technique is. And all you have to do going forward, really, is have the days that you're going to do the mindfulness practice, and what mindfulness practice it is, you've already identified that, and how you might bring in your settling techniques. Now, the settling technique might be box breathing. You might say it's as needed. So you could go box breathing every day as needed. But you also might want to have it that in addition to having the as needed, which is of course great because that's when the spiral gets going, as needed, you might also have it where you're practicing on a regular basis just to have that experience of practicing it, just to feel a little more relaxed in that moment. So this is for you to do whatever you're going to do, but the reason we're doing this is because it's all drilling down to what you're going to be writing about in your paper. You don't have to use the word obstacle and challenge. In fact, I encourage you not to. But I can look in your paper and I can go, oh, there's the obstacle, there's the challenge. There's the challenge and there's the obstacle. There's the challenge. Anybody could do that. But you don't need to use that language because then you have to explain that language. And that's a whole other page and a half to explain it. You don't have to use spiral. In fact, I encourage you not to use spiral. We're learning the spirals and we're talking about them so that you can go, oh yes, something happens, and then there's thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and then there's the tendency to overreact. This is the problem. Something happens, and there's this tendency to overreact. And mindfulness isn't going to directly help with this, and mindfulness isn't going to help with this. There's a lot of ways to not overreact. Hey, if your boss sends you a message, just like close your computer right then and like call me. Like every time that happens, call me. Well, there's not a lot of mindfulness in that, but that's a good thing to do perhaps. So it could be very useful. But here we're saying, what's the mindfulness practice opportunity? And it resides in between those 2 moments. And you'll want to explain that. So this is helping us zero in on that. Any questions about that? All right, your sandwich practices. So, now some of you, just so you all know, for those of you who like the sandwich practice, and I'm going to read a couple first, we've got the first layer, the bun, the top bun. And then we've got the under bun. And then we've got sort of like the protein, or whatever we want to call it. Some of you had a 5-part practice. So I can tell when you're making your Subway submarine sandwiches, you've got a lot of stuff going on in there because you're packing it in. But we don't want it to be too complicated. So if you're a sandwich practice person, make it whatever you want it to be, of course. But know that even that little three-part thing can be quite useful. So I'm just going to read a couple, and then I'm interested in you all elaborating. But I'm picking these because actually I could read any of them. But for the sake of time. I decided that my sandwich practice would be the following. 3 minutes of box breathing. Box breathing. Followed by 6 minutes of open monitoring. Followed by 3 minutes of gratitude. Okay. Nice little sandwich. I chose to start with the 3 minutes of box breathing because I noticed that it helps clear my mind and reduce stress. So what are we using box breathing as? Settling technique. How nice. Sometimes when I start a mindfulness practice, I'm not in a calm state. Anybody have that experience? I am anxious and stressed about the tasks that I must complete for the day, or I'm trying to wind down from a hectic day. Starting a mindfulness practice with focused attention to your body scan can feel overwhelming and at times like an additional task. Anybody relate to that? This is like brilliant. Box breathing helps me assimilate into my mindfulness practice because I am manipulating my breath and it positively affects my heart rate and body temperature. Oh my God. You got it. After box breathing, I would practice open monitoring. I enjoy open monitoring because there is no object of attention. Oh my God, you get it. Open monitoring provides me the opportunity to expand my awareness and assume a more open and receptive state. Expanding aware outward brings a sense of relief and allows me to focus on things surrounding me in the present moment. Instead of focusing on one thing, I am receptive to much more such as sights, sounds, and smells passing in the environment. That's exactly right. And then I think I wrote to this person and said, what else besides sights, sounds, and smells going on around you? And then we came to the exploration, oh yeah, also my thoughts and feelings. Those are coming and going too. That's oftentimes forgotten about. And then to conclude the mindfulness practice, I would do gratitude reflection. Sometimes I tend to focus on the things that go wrong in my life or the events that didn't go my way. Anybody relate to that? Therefore, I want to spend some minutes expressing gratitude for the people in my life and the things I'm fortunate to have. I want to express gratitude for my parents, siblings, home, food, and education. Right? Isn't that a nice way to practice? I begin with a few slower, deeper breaths, box breathing. I then move into a practice that researchers found is useful for, among other things, changing the structure and function of my brain in areas that allow me to be more skillful in the ways that I wish to and have these capacities. And I close with gratitude. That could be a very reinforcing kind of experience, right? Like, I would want to do that. Like, in fact, I want to do that. My experience exercising the sandwich practice has been great. I implement my leadership skills. This is SALT leadership. By deciding my preferred practices. Additionally, it provides 12 minutes of solitude and mindfulness. By choosing my practices for the sandwich practice, I can understand my body and mind more. It opens another door to understanding my individuality and inner self. Okay, so it's really nice. I've yet to read one that I don't say really nice, just to share with you all. But I decided to start my practice by listening to Barbies by Pink. Excellent. So here we have a song. Barbies. Although the song triggers a reminiscing to the past rather than living in the now, I'm going to come back to that. It's certainly, what I'm hearing is that song plays and I'm transported in time. Right? That's wonderful. It brings me a sense of peace and calm in moments of doubt and stress. So what is the song in our mindful living flow? It's a settling technique. How wonderful. It is easy to forget the good when I am overwhelmed with seeking to move into my next phase, yet when I reach that place, it will have its own set of challenges and a lot of insight, and I will find myself yearning for this time in my life. Thus, I left this exercise with a reminder to cherish the present. Right? How wonderful is that? I then shifted to practicing my box breathing. We've got box breathing here. I use a lightly cushioned workout mat and sat on my bedroom floor. I do this practice sitting in bed, but I found that sitting on a solid surface is more comfortable. For 5 minutes, I inhale to the count of 4, and they do a box breathing practice. I do this when my roommate's not home, so I can focus more on my breath. I was proud of myself for completing 5 minutes without the desire to shorten it or getting distracted. And after box breathing, I journal two wishes for people in this person's life. And so they close the journaling. They start with a song, they move to box breathing, and they close with journaling. And then journaling for this, where journal and wish and send wishes to people who fall into this loving kindness connection environment. Somebody who's wonderful, somebody whose things are difficult. And journaling for this difficult person here was the toughest task because I felt myself getting annoyed thinking about them. But after a few minutes, I was able to wish for them patience and thoughtfulness. This is somebody that they were interacting with who they don't even know. It's a little random interaction. I ended the practice laying in silence. No music, television, or social media before sleeping. I don't know how many minutes this was, but I ended up falling asleep for the night. In the morning, it was nice to recall that I had done this because I cannot remember a time where I slept in complete silence. Couple things. Although the song triggers a moment of reminiscing to the past rather than living in the now, is that necessarily the case? The reminiscing of the past is certainly the past. But is it not living in the now, necessarily? In what ways could you have it where the song triggers or brings to mind a memory from the past without you having to not be living in the now?
Couldn't you just be like reflecting on the past, right? And still be living in the now, like you have this space between you and the event that happened, so you can have a different perspective?
Yes, I think you could tap it more directly. Jared?
Yeah, I think that if you're thinking of a good memory from the past, it's probably because you were living in the present at that moment, so maybe you're trying to channel that.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. It could be tagged more directly. How can you be thinking of the past and be in the present?
If you're aware that you're thinking of the past.
If you're aware
then
that you're thinking of the
actually
past.
In the now.
Right. So if you're aware, oh, I'm having this feeling or I'm having this memory from the past, and you are aware that you're having that experience, those memories, those images, that feeling, if you're aware of it, what kind of practice is that, actually? Thoughts coming to mind and memories coming to mind, and you're aware of it. You're focused attention, as well as, but you could have it where for a few moments you're just lost in memories of the past. And that would be not, right? So it's not necessarily one or the other, it depends. This is why it is that if we receive the email and we're like, everything I do is no good, is garbage, you can get sucked into. Or you could be aware, oh, there's that thought again, that everything I do is garbage. And that's happening in the present moment. We're not lost with mind wandering. We're very much aware of where the mind is going. We might have been lost for a few moments before. And then journaling for the server was the toughest task because at first I felt myself getting annoyed. That's amazing, right? Why is that amazing? What is this person saying? In that moment, they were aware. Of course, the feeling of being annoyed is unpleasant. It's going to always be unpleasant. But the awareness of it is a game changer. And in fact, but after a few moments, the game has changed. Perhaps because of the awareness of. One more. There's so many more. One person even created a little image of their sandwich. And I identified. They began with the top slice of bread, box breathing. Then they moved on to the cheese, focused attention. Then the tomato, song. Then a classical work, rock. Then bacon, another non-vegetarian. Connection. Then lettuce, body scan. Then a bottom slice of bread, box breathing. Right? This week I did a number of practices that were slightly different from my normal practice routine. Thus far, my favorite and most reliable practice has been focused attention. I've also enjoyed the connection practice. For your paper, you could bring growth into it. But it might also be that you pick one because it connects, you find it to be most helpful for the different obstacles you're going to be talking about. On Saturday and Sunday, I did my typical 6-minute focused attention practice. On Monday, I did my first sandwich practice that I made up for myself. For the first 3 minutes, I listened to a white noise playlist from Spotify. I focused on the sounds of the white noise because I tend to find them interesting and calming. What kind of practice is it at the moment? Well, what kind of, the interesting and calming? Settling technique. I also think, because you all were pointing in the right direction as well, I also think that the white noise really helped me turn down my external dial. I'll come back to that. There were times when I noticed that my mind started to wander. But then I brought it back. I realized that this was not so different from a regular, what kind of practice? Focused attention practice, because I focused on an object, continued focusing on that object, in this case the white noise, and then brought my focus back when I noticed my mind wandering. That's brilliant. I found that this 3 minutes was very relaxing. Oh, how wonderful to bring them together. It's a mindfulness practice and it's a settling technique, and bundled up into one because you found that balance. Now, person wrote, I also think that the white noise really helps me to turn down my external dial. So without exploring that fully at the moment, let me just share. By listening to white noise and not all the other stuff we could be having going on, we've turned down the external dial. There's a very low level of external dial that's going on. It's now like white noise, so it's as pretty low as it gets. So I think that the white noise really helps me turn down my external dial. Maybe the person means internal dial. I don't know. I can put on the white noise and my busy mind begins to go down. I'm not sure. Or maybe the person just means it helps me turn down my external dial, to which I would say they are one and the same. By putting on that level, low level of stimulation, that is a deliberate decision and behavior that's turning down the external dial. So if you wrote this and that's confusing, or if you didn't write this but that's confusing, you can follow me later on. Okay. And then they went on to speak to how it continued. And one more, and then we'll take some from. For a sandwich practice, I decided to start with a focused attention practice. Followed by box breathing. And ending with a connection practice. I have done the focused attention practice the most. To me, the focused attention practice is the stepping stone for every other practice because it introduced me to being aware of my thoughts when they wander. Hugely important for you to write about that in your paper, right? If your paper leads the reader to believe, as maybe it would have at the beginning of the semester, that you're going to practice mindfulness to feel less stressed, there's not going to be a whole lot of insight, really. Of course, the less stressed we are, the less likely we are to overreact and stuff like that, but this is pivotal. It introduced me to my being, and all the practices can offer this. I mean, body scan as well. I have noticed that my mind wanders immensely in the mornings. I feel like this is so because I often feel stressed about the things I must do for the rest of the day. Ask which causes which. Since I would like to practice in the mornings consistently, I would like to follow the focused attention practice with the self-guided box breathing exercise. I think that this would be beneficial for me to relax. Beginning with a mindfulness practice, moving into a what? Settling technique. After the relaxation practice, I would like to do the body scan practice. The body scan practice is not necessarily my favorite practice, since I usually try to avoid how my body feels. Right. If you're aware of that, you're already way ahead of the game. Most of us aren't aware of the extent to which we might try to avoid. things that are unpleasant. But in doing the practice, I've grown to be aware of my bodily sensations in moments where I feel a sense of stress and urgency. In a paper, for you to share your experience with the reader. Why do I do the body scan if you bring that into it? Because I've grown to be aware of my bodily sensations in the moment when I feel a sense of stress and urgency. You want to be less reactive when feeling a sense of urgency? Become more aware of and catch the early warning signs of urgency sooner. So this is why the body scan practice can be helpful for dealing with, a thought, I got to get this done now or I'm going to get fired, or a feeling like, Finally, I would end with the connection practice because I found it helped me to improve my mood. Doing the practice, I have felt difficulty in genuinely giving my best wishes to myself or other people. Aware of this difficulty, I've pushed myself to be genuine when I give my best wishes, which I think has improved how I feel about myself and others. I've already noticed how this practice has allowed me to be nicer to certain people who are now reciprocating the niceness back. Wow. I think that that's a pattern that you will find emerging more and more. And you're already pretty nice. The person who wrote this is as nice as they get. Ideally, I would like to do this every morning at 8 a.m. I think doing so would continue to improve how I experience the rest of the day. So we've all got our own, approach to this. These are just a couple of ways that your classmates and or you have done so as examples. I really could read every one of them, I think, and we would plumb the nice things. What are some other ways that you all have constructed your sandwich practice? What's a way that you started it? Are there other things that you start with?
I started mine with a walk.
Okay, a walk. Maybe it might have a mindful quality to it, but even if it doesn't, just walk it. Wonderful. What are some other ways that we start our sandwich practice, or did start our sandwich practice? You can continue doing sandwich practices, or you can be done with sandwich practices. Yes.
I started with gratitude.
Very nice. Begin with gratitude. What else?
Line breathing.
Line breathing. You begin with the breathing. What else? Yeah.
I can't tell if it's up there, I can't see, but I did a song.
Okay, a song. What song?
They kind of differ, but I have like a playlist.
Okay, so this is what's so beautiful. I begin with a song. And it doesn't have to be the same song, right? It could also be, I then do open monitoring, but you know what? Some days you might just say, you know what? I can only do open monitoring, but after doing my box breathing, I've decided I'm going to do focused attention today. And if you understand, as was talked about in the chapter on practice, why different practices can sort of target slightly different things, you might be like, I'm feeling very scattered. Open monitoring might feel too open and receptive. I'm going to actually do a focused attention practice. And so you can swap out. But just like you would go get your sandwich at the Publix, you'd be like, today, actually I want to do that instead of that. It's the same thing. Okay, what's a middle layer, another middle layer that some of you came up with?
Focused attention.
Focused attention. What's one more? Middle layer?
Connection.
Connection, very nice. And then what's another way of ending it? There's some other ways that you all came up with to end it. Yeah.
I planned out my day at the end.
Yeah, right. Planning the day. How nice is that? High, high, high in solitude. Sitting there planning the day. You can't imagine, at least in my experience, how valuable it is to take 6 minutes, or whatever it takes, 12 minutes, 18 minutes, 3 minutes, and think out the day. Usually you think out the day and then you start thinking about, oh, I gotta do that thing, and then you stop doing the planning because you get anxious because you start thinking about something. But if you allocate the time for it, then you don't just, it keeps you in your seat. You can say, okay, very, very nice. All right. So sandwich practices may appear in your paper, may not appear in your paper. You might keep doing them. You don't need to do them. You've learned it. You've seen how you can bring them together. It's up to you what you choose to do with it. Now, 20 minutes left. If you would, just take one, keep it turned upside down, but you can take one for break. Don't turn it over. So, who here would like to have a little more time to work on anything you got from, not asking about the paper in the class, but any of your assignments? Who would like to have a little more time to work on a project for work? Who would like to have a little more time to work on, to have to do anything? Raise your hand if you'd like to have a little more time. Okay. I join you in that. So, for you. For you. For you. For you. Notice what the people behind me are doing. You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome. Alrighty. So what have people begun to do? You're in charge. So first of all, I didn't say what to do, I just handed it to you. Right? But what are some people beginning to do? Smell it. Oh, and Harrison's on top of it already. Because this is what? This is an extension of time. So you have your extension of time. Now, what do we do? Why did we begin to bring it to our nose?
What else are we gonna do?
What?
I don't know what else I would do with it. Maybe eat it.
Well, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to do anything with it. Oh, that was very thoughtful of you.
I'll take another one.
Well, one of the bigger one. So let's do a mindfulness practice. By bringing ourselves into a comfortable seated posture. As we lower or close our eyes, rest attention on the sensations of the body setting. If this is pleasing to you, have it close. If it's not pleasing to you, put it away. And if it is pleasing to you, when let's bring it just close enough to be able to find the sweet spot of where it's not too overwhelming but not too subtle. And now let's focus our attention on the sensations arising around the aroma. Notice the sensations in the body that accompany thoughts you might be having. And now let's just take a few more slower, deeper, comfortable breaths, focusing on the aroma as we breathe. Alrighty. Opening the eyes if we close them or lowered them. So what are we doing in this moment, all of us? We are doing a focus attention practice. And what's the object of attention? The time, but more specifically, the smell. If you're looking at it, it would be the sight. If you're smelling, which most of us are doing, it's the aroma. And we're focusing on the aroma. And what quality does that tend to generate in your experience? It can be relaxing, just like the spraying of this is why today we didn't have the eucalyptus. This is the same stand-up. So your motion for an extension of time, well, turn over your piece of paper. What we're going to do is we're going to move through this relatively quickly and then listen to a song. So who would like to read the caption? Who hasn't spoken much today? This is your chance. Who would like to read the caption? Maybe you think you've spoken a lot today. You can read the caption too. Who would like to read the caption?
You're drawing and 3 haiku.
No. Oh, I'm sorry, that's in front of you. Okay, you can read it. Go ahead. Read the caption.
The caption, you, aka...
No, before that, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. in the neural circuit court in and for the great and healthy state of mind.
Okay, very nice. Some people often will say in the neutral, or say something else.
That's what I
That's-
would have read that.
Yes, but it is the neural, because we are exploring here the neural circuitry. The neural circuitry. In and for the great and healthy state of mind. This is what we're plumbing the depths of. Okay, and then you, go on.
You, aka me, petitioner, versus reality, respondent.
Right. So just know that when you find yourself in a situation in the practice of law or wherever it is, and you want more time, it's you versus reality. And it was you versus reality leading up to that moment. It's you versus reality beyond. And maybe it doesn't have to be you versus reality. Maybe we can turn it into a collaborative embrace of you and reality. Which means if it's you versus reality, what are you doing in that moment? If we look at our mindful living flow, you are resisting. And the less we resist, the more it becomes you and reality, as if you're even separate. So the motion for an extension of time. Pursuant to the laws for the great and healthy state of mind, petitioner that you respectfully moves for an order extending the amount of time available to focus on law school studies and related tasks and projects. 1, petitioner is enrolled in law school, known far and wide as a grueling experience where time is short, the workload is heavy, and the fees can surprise you. 2, from time to time, petitioner finds there is not enough time to get everything done. Such times include, what's one time that you find that you can't get everything done? Just write down one thing. Yes?
Oh, I was just gonna say finals.
Finals, yes, good. Write down finals. Preparing for finals. And this is yours to keep. You're not turning this in, so you can, we're just going to go through this relatively quickly, so one word or just a jot of an idea. And during such times, petitioner begins to think that, what do you begin to think when you turn your mind to the fact that you don't have enough time to plan for finals, or whatever your number 2 was? And it's just like a word or two. You don't have to make it a complete sentence. And at those times, you begin to feel what? What would be a feeling that you would have in those moments that you have these thoughts about there not being enough time to get that thing or to prepare for that thing? And then you also experience sensations in the body that include, and what would be one sensation in the body that might arise during that time? And then as a result, you occasionally feel a sense of urgency that includes stress, that increases stress, undermines your ability to perform optimally, and adversely affects your relationship with whom? Okay, so this is meant for you to reflect on in time, to fill out in time, but to at least have us go through it so we have a sense of it. And wherefore, petitioner respectfully requests that the court enter an order extending the amount of time to study for class, prepare for exams, finish projects, exercise, eat, relax, sleep, and spend time with family and friends. Respectfully submitted. So one day this week, this will be up on the website also, you'll fill this in a little bit more explicitly. What is this though? This is just another look at it's just another way of looking at the spiral. Right? It's just a spiral. Yet another way of looking at the spiral. And what is this intended to remind us of? When you feel like you have that sense of urgency because you don't have enough time.
Do a settling technique.
To do a settling technique. To do a focused attention practice. And to notice what happens to that feeling of urgency. Is the challenge going to change that there's an exam in 2 weeks? Is the challenge going to change that the assignment is due tomorrow? No. Might these change? Yes. Is our unpleasantness and dissatisfaction and stress and frustration the result of this? I'm going to encourage you to reflect on the possibility that it's not because of this. And if for some reason you haven't left yourself enough time, as a matter of fact, it's because a lot of spirals leading up to it were leading to procrastination and avoidance and things like that. And each of those could have been their own moment to be a little bit more present. And then we can learn for the next time. Okay. Our song. Inner risking. So, You're welcome. So, on the back of your calendar, please today fill out your calendar. Please today fill out your calendar. So starting tomorrow, you have got it put somewhere and you will be abiding by it. Or it's putting an X because it's just like not working for that thing.
Can we change it around, like I did over
Yes,
monitoring, but
you
like.
can absolutely change it around because you've learned from the experience and you're optimizing the utility of it. Yes, absolutely. You're not stuck in any way. In fact, it's meant to be changed around as you gather more data from the realities of how it works. All right. On the back, you'll see that there is your drawing and free haiku. So your creative for next week will be to actually get outside, this is on the website, with your crayons, to get outside with your crayons, to do it sooner than later. This weekend, I'm suggesting, early in the morning, later at night, at some time when it's sort of like charming out there. And to, with your crayons, draw what you see for a period of time, like flesh it out. And then you'll see how there's an instruction to then create a haiku. And there'll be instructions on a haiku. You might remember the haiku. You are a great class, each moment a joy. It's a one-syllable word. Each moment a joy, What, Harrison?
Is.
A what?
All right. Looking for one syllable word.
That finishes the sentence. It's 7 syllables. Each moment a joy, a what? Each moment a joyful
Is joyous.
time. Each moment is joyous. And then the closing 5 syllables. Like, not as I thought. But you'll be reflecting on this thing that you wrote, this thing you drew, and then you'll be doing a little, and you'll read about and learn more about haiku, which have very much to do with a much more nuanced and deep relationship to that experience. And then to have to do 2 other haiku. So you'll be creating 3 haiku. The chapter you'll be reading this week is a chapter on creativity, which leads us, of course, next week to the Low Art Museum, where we'll be meeting at 8:30. So here's our song that I think I can relate to, and perhaps you can relate to it. Maybe you know it. It's the live version, apparently. Do you find some lines that you can relate to? What's a line or two that strike you as apt? Yeah, Andrew.
Gotta do what you can, just to keep your love alive. Try not to confuse it with what you do to survive.
Very nice, right? And what it is that your love is alive about can be lots of things in life, right? Love for the law, love for a personal relationship, love for just being here, being alive. What else? Very nice. Not to confuse it, not to confuse it. What else?
I don't know when that road turned into the road I'm on.
Right. I don't know when that road turned to the road I'm on, but this is the road you're on, right? And they're all pretty fabulous, but also who's doing the driving? You are, right? Who's steering? You are. And that'll always be the case. How wonderful is that? But it also means, sometimes we take act, yeah. Authorizing ourselves at times to do things that, for ourselves. What line or two jump out at you?
Looking back at the years gone by, like so many summer fields.
Yeah, right? And how can we feel sometimes when we look back? We could look back with regret or sort of, tender emotions. We could also look back with what? What did you bring into the last bit of your experience with the gratitude? Right? It's just they're just different ways of looking at the same thing, reflecting on the same thing. What else? What's another one? Yes.
Just the phrase running on empty, like feeling like burned out, but you have to like keep going.
Right, feeling like burned out, feeling like burned out. And then to be able to pivot to do something that's useful, because sometimes, and this is where the settling technique of nurturing becomes very relevant. Something for self-care, Or something as simple as this. Keep this by your desk. This isn't meant to be thrown into your dinner. This is meant to be like by your desk. And then when you feel yourself getting a little agitated, your spiral going, offer yourself an extension of time. Because it's in the mind more than it is the reality. You'll get it done. You always have. Yes, Rich?
I don't know how to tell you all just how crazy this life feels.
Yeah. And then, looking into their eyes, I see them running too, right? We're all in this. But to see somebody else running is to be aware, right? To settle our own snow globe and spiral enough. The last thing I'll share with you all is the nice conversation we had about your spirals. In the second or third week of class, I could have said, tell me about your snow globes, and we did that. And we could talk about the the packages arriving, we could talk about the friend dipping out. But the spiral allows us to not just have it be where we're caught in something, it actually allows us to begin to notice and identify the kinds of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. So we're drilling deeper. And the mindfulness practices have us pay attention to the very things that are the obstacles so that we can be more skillful, because they either aren't impacting us as much because we're different because of practice, or we offer ourselves settling techniques when they're experienced so that we soften their blow,